Alright, welcome to our Science 10 class. Um, this module will cover for about 1 week. Alright, our target is you will be able to describe and relate the distribution of active volcanoes, earthquake epicenters, and major mountain belts to plate tectonic theory. So our topic is about the plate tectonics and earthquakes. So before we proceed, we will try to give definition of different terms. Number one, we have epicenter. So epicenter is the point on the Earth's surface vertically above the focus point in the crust rupture begins. So mauni ang point nga ato makita ang pinakasentro sa linog. Fault, it is the narrow zones where rock masses move in relation to one another. Magnitude, the measure of the amplitude of the seismic waves an earthquake source produces as recorded by the seismograph. Kakusgon sa linog. Seismic, usually generated by movements of the Earth's tectonic plates or explosion of volcanoes. Tsunami, dako nga bawd, are giant waves caused by earthquakes or volcanic eruptions under the sea. Mahitabo ra ning tsunami kung naay earthquake or volcanic eruptions sa ilawom sa dagat. And it is also known as the harbor wave. Volcano, a vent or fissure in the planet's crust through which lava, ash, rock, and gases erupts sa ato pa mga bulkan. So let us have the structure of the Earth. So the structure of the Earth is made up of three main layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core, wherein the crust is the uppermost layer of the Earth, and next part is the mantle. And the third part is the core, wherein this core is divided into two parts, the inner core and the outer core. So we'll start with the crust. The crust is made up of a variety of solid rocks like sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous rocks. So it has an average density of 2.8 grams cubic centimeter. 2.8 grams per cubic centimeter. And its thickness ranges from 5 to 50 kilometers. So the crust is thickest in a part where relatively young mountains is present and thinnest along the ocean floor. So bagga siya kung naay bukid and nipis kung tuwa sa ilawom sa dagat. So that's the crust. So this is the crust. Natay duha ka parts. So the continental crust and the oceanic crust. The continental crust is very thick. Baga siya for about 10 to 70 kilometers. So mo na continental crust baga because of the bukid, because of the mountain ranges na naa sa continental crust, so manong baga si continental crust. It is buoyant. Buoyant, less dense. So gaan. Gaan siya than the oceanic crust. And mostly of this continental crust, mostly of the formations under this continental crust is old. Next is the oceanic crust. See, oceanic crust thin for about 7 kilometers only, but it is very dense. But pasabot bugat. So, tungod kay bugat siya, it will sink under the continental crust. So, if mahitabo nga mag-meet si continental crust o si oceanic crust, mag-abot silang duha, definitely si continental crust will float and the oceanic crust tends to go downward, and most of the formations under this oceanic crust is very young. Earth has two different types of crust, as what I've said, continental crust and the oceanic crust. Each has different properties and therefore behaves in different ways. So continental crust forms the land. So naadto makita na to sa continental crust ang mga continents. And it has the average thickness for about 35 kilometers. Under this continental crust are the mountain chains, example of which kanang sa Himalayas group of mountain. Thickness is approximately twice the thickness, about 70 kilometers. As what I've said again, continental crust is less dense and therefore more buoyant than oceanic crust. So, mas gaan siya kaysa oceanic crust. Continental crust contains some of the oldest rocks on Earth. And pinakatiguang nga nakitaan nga rock nga naa sa continental crust is about 3.5 billion years old. And let us have the oceanic crust. Oceanic crust, from the word itself, so it is a type of crust nga naa under sa ocean. So mao na diha gikan ang iyang name, oceanic crust. So compared to continental crust, oceanic crust is thin for about 6 to 11 kilometers. It is more dense, bugat, than continental crust, and therefore when these two types of crust meet, si oceanic crust mopailawom will sink underneath the continental crust. The rock formations under of oceanic crust are very young compared with most of the rocks to continental crust. So let us have the differences between the oceanic and the continental crust. Number 1, the oceanic crust is dominated by mafic and ultramafic intrusive igneous rocks. Both pasabot, the rock formations under the oceanic crust are dominated with silicates. Ang pinaka-common sa silicates nga makita na to sa oceanic crust is basalt. So, whereas the continental rocks are dominated by granitic or felsic intrusive igneous rocks, both pasabot, form from molten materials like magma and coals slowly. And most of the common molten materials nga nibugnaw is granite. So, ang sa oceanic crust ang makita na to mostly basalt, while the continental crust, ang mga rocks na ito makitaan is granite. Second, the difference in the density has an impact on the isostasy of crust floating in the semi-fluid upper mantle or the asthenosphere, with the continental crust about 2.7 gram per cubic centimeter rising or floating above the oceanic crust. So, mayroon tag-isostasy, it is the state of gravitational equilibrium between the crust and the mantle. So, kung si continental crust mo float siya sa mantle, si continental crust. So, the gravitational equilibrium between the crust and the mantle. So, naa sa crust, makita si continental crust mo float siya definitely sa upper mantle. Ang gitawag na tog asthenosphere. Third, because continental crust is less dense, gaan si continental crust than the oceanic crust, si oceanic crust, it floats higher on the mantle, just like a piece of styrofoam floats higher on the water than a piece of wood does. So, continental crust mo float than the oceanic crust. Let us have the tectonic plates. So, mao ni ang mga nagkalain-lain nga mga plates sa tibuok kalibutan. When we say tectonic, it is the movement. Naghisgot man tag plate, so the movement of the plate gitawag na siya tectonic plate. By the way, the plates around the world are in constant motion. So ang isang movement is for about 1 centimeter a year. So ang ana ra kagamay. 1 centimeter a year in constant motion ha ang atong mga plates sa tibuok kalibutan kani sila nga mga plates tanan, they are in constant motion for about 1 centimeter a year. The plate tectonics is a theory which suggests that Earth's crust is made up of plates. Ang crust sa tibuok kalibutan, ang atong Earth, is made up of plates that interact with various ways, thus producing earthquakes. So kung mulihok ang mga plates, it produces earthquakes, and geologic features will be formed like mountains, volcanoes, and other geologic features. Plates are rigid sections of the lithosphere that move as a unit. So kani silang mga plates sa tibuok kalibutan, they are in constant motion. So kung mag-interact na sila between other plates, ang mahitabo na ay earthquake. And some other geologic features will be formed like mountains and volcanoes. So these are the different plates around the world. So that is all for our week 1. An activity sheet was distributed to you through your parents or guardians. Please answer the activity sheets that will be collected every Friday at the assigned collection venue, which is your barangay hall or the barangay gym. So palihog og answer sa mga activity sheets. Kaya ito na i-collect kada Friday. Thanks for watching. Take time to replay the video if some points are not cleared on your end. See you next week.